So today, we're going to talk about something fascinating, a guide to addiction recovery that's literally hundreds of years old. But you know what? It feels incredibly relevant right now. We're going to dive into a 14th century faith-based approach that sees addiction as way more than just a physical problem. It sees it as a deep spiritual challenge that needs, well, spiritual solutions. Let's explore how this ancient wisdom just might offer a really powerful path to healing.
You know, when we talk about addiction, we usually talk about brain chemistry or psychology or our environment. And look, all of that is absolutely crucial. But what if there's another layer? This ancient perspective really asks us to think bigger, to consider that maybe addiction affects our entire being, right down to our spiritual core.
And this is the core idea, which comes from Islamic theology. It frames addiction as a spiritual ailment. Think of it as a wound on the soul, or the ruh. The idea here isn't just that the behaviors are harmful, it's that they're a symptom of something deeper, a kind of disruption of our inner harmony, of our connection to something bigger than ourselves.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to look at the ancient spiritual framework itself. Then we'll break down its 3 key pillars for recovery, see how these ideas are actually applied in daily life, and finally, we'll ask the big question: how does a 700-year-old model like this hold up in today's world?
All right, let's get into it. Our guide on this journey is a 14th century Islamic scholar, a brilliant mind named Ibn al-Qayyim. He developed this incredibly holistic program for healing that addresses the mind, the body, and the spirit in a way that, honestly, feels way ahead of its time.
Yeah, this is long before modern psychology was even a thing. Ibn al-Qayyim created this really comprehensive program. And for him, recovery wasn't just a battle of willpower. No, it was a journey of profound spiritual healing and deep, meaningful personal growth. It's not just about stopping a behavior. It's about a total transformation.
So what's the secret sauce? What's at the core of his method? Well, the whole program really rests on 3 foundational spiritual ideas. He called them the pillars of recovery, and they're all designed to heal what he considered the very center of our being, the heart.
The first pillar is called taqwa, which translates to God consciousness. Now think of this like a constant mindful awareness of a higher presence. It's a bit like modern mindfulness, actually. This awareness becomes your internal compass, you know? It pushes you toward honesty with yourself and gives you the moral discipline that is the absolute bedrock of recovery.
Pillar number 2 is Toba, or repentance. And this is so much more than just saying you're sorry. This is an active, powerful process. It's about looking your mistakes in the eye, feeling real remorse, and then, this is the key part, committing to a totally new direction. It's like a hard reset for the soul, a way to break those awful cycles of shame and guilt that keep people trapped.
And that brings us to the 3rd pillar, Tazkiya al-Nafs, which means purification of the heart. So if taqwa is having the compass, then tazkiya is the active, ongoing work of actually using that compass to steer the ship. It's about constantly cleansing your spirit, correcting your course, and really nurturing your soul to find lasting freedom. It's not a one-and-done thing. It's a lifelong practice.
Okay, so these 3 pillars are a really powerful foundation. But theory is one thing, right? How does this all translate into action? Like, what do you actually do? Let's look at how this whole framework gets woven into daily life to make recovery stick. It really boils down to consistent daily habits. Simple things, but powerful, like daily prayer and remembrance, just to stay grounded and mindful. Taking time for reflection on sacred texts to find wisdom in a bigger perspective. Acts of service to find a purpose outside of your own struggle. And, so importantly, real active engagement with a supportive community. And let's just pause on this community piece, because it is absolutely critical. It's like the original social support network. A faith community can give you a safe, non-judgmental space to just be real. It creates accountability, right? It offers mentorship from people who've actually walked that path. And it directly fights back against that crushing isolation and shame that addiction thrives on. It's a total game changer.
So now we get to the big question. How does a spiritual model from the 14th century fit into our modern, often very secular world? Let's take a look at why it's still so relevant, and also some of the challenges it faces.
So if you put them side by side, you see some interesting differences. Secular methods tend to focus on psychology and behavior, using amazing tools like cognitive behavioral therapy and really emphasizing self-responsibility. Faith-based models, well, they focus more on a spiritual connection and divine guidance, using tools like prayer and community worship. Both absolutely value support, but where that support comes from and how it's structured can be pretty different.
Which brings us to the question you're probably asking right now. It's all well and good to talk philosophy, but what about the results? I mean, do these faith-based models actually work?
Well, the numbers can be pretty stunning. A study of one program, the Christian-based Rockbridge program, which weaves faith right into its therapy, reported a one-year sobriety rate of 84% for people who completed their treatment. 84%, that's a huge number.
And to put that 84% into perspective, take a look at this. It's compared here to the average for more conventional methods, which hovers around 54%. That is a 30-point difference. Now, of course, every program is different, but this really suggests that for a lot of people, bringing spirituality into the mix can be a seriously powerful element for long-term success.
But look, it's not without its challenges. Of course not. There's still a fair bit of skepticism out there, and this common misunderstanding that spirituality is somehow anti-science or that it conflicts with mental health treatment, when actually a lot of people would argue they can work together beautifully.
There's a quote from the source material that just sums this all up so perfectly. It says, "Faith acts both as a refuge during recovery and as a compass guiding toward lasting transformation. It plays two roles, you see. It's a safe place to land during the storm, and it's also the map that shows you the way out."
And that really brings us to the heart of the matter. This ancient model pushes us to think beyond just sobriety. It makes us ask a much, much bigger question. If recovery isn't just about stopping a behavior, if it's really about healing your soul and finding a whole new purpose, then what does that kind of true, deep recovery really, truly look like?